Ishwaram, as resplendent sun. It's the start of a bright new day. Time to rise, time to shine, Lord divine. Time to lead us along life's way. Awake, Lord of Buddha party. Awake, O Lord, over all mankind. Awake, O Lord of compassion, that the world good fortune may find.
I very much welcome the opportunity to come to the Cottontail Ranch. We in Northern California have heard much about your retreats, especially the fact that they last 4 days. All of you appear so wonderfully vibrant. I have to ask you this question. Are you happy? This is, after all, the theme of your retreat. And if a speaker has not asked that question yet, it appears very appropriate at this time to ask whether you're happy. Because certainly the theme of be happy, putting that question in a different perspective of are you happy, certainly after the end of these 4 days, and certainly by Monday, I wish that all of you certainly can answer that question, not only in the affirmative, but with real joy and vigor of a resounding yes, that you are in fact happy. This certainly not only should be the theme, but it should be the end result. Each of us should leave, whenever we're leaving, with that feeling that we came here in whatever state we were in, and we left feeling happy. I just left from Milan, Italy yesterday at 8 a.m. and arrived in San Francisco at 8 p.m. to find out that my police chief, after 45 days, had been fired. And this was the second police chief that San Francisco has had in the last 45 days. We've had 2 fired. So I can't say I was particularly happy. I like both of them. But we all have these little things that happen to us, little changes that occur, and you ask ourselves, are you happy? And be happy. Have you ever had this wondrous experience in Prashanti Nilayam or any other place in India where Baba is, where he approaches you or someone next to you and he says something like, where are you from? How long are you going to be here? When did you arrive? And no matter what your answer is, or the fact that there's a lack of an answer, which occurs at least half of the time, what do you hear from Swami? 2 words, and he usually repeats them 3 times. Very happy. Very happy. Very happy. Now, how could he always be very happy with regard to whatever your response is to whatever the question was? And he says that that's his nature. His nature is to be happy. His nature is that he couldn't be anything other than very happy. He also tells us that that's our nature. What I'd like to do this afternoon is take us back, because I took myself back in my recent trip, to a time contemporaneous with a 14-year-old in a place called Puttaparthi, which if you ask the rest of the world, excluding us and Sai devotees, where is Puttaparthi, what do you think their response would be? We'll take ourselves back to Puttaparthi in 1940 and take a look at what was happening in the world, and suddenly a 14-year-old speaks and he says, Manasa Bhajare Guru Charanam, grab onto the lotus feet, take you across the samsara, take you across the sea, take you across to liberation. And the reason that I'm speaking about this was I just returned from a trip to England, France, and Italy with my parents. And I was very interested in returning to a place that has always excited me and made me feel extremely spiritual, other than Puda Party. The second place in the world that does it is a little town in Italy, in Umbria, called Assisi. The other place that I went to many places, but the other place that had some interest to me, had interest to me indirectly because my father was so interested, and that was the beaches of Normandy. And when I was on the beaches of Normandy, reflecting back what occurred on Utah Beach, what occurred on Omaha Beach, June 6, 1944, I began to think about, here is this 14-year-old, another continent, talking Manasabhadra Guru Charanam, talking about he has come with a wonderful message, and if you look what was happening at the time that this message was delivered, and you look at it now, you wonder how he has found a receptive audience. Well, we know why. I went and looked at the beaches of Normandy, Utah, and Omaha beaches. And these were the beaches that the Allied forces landed in June 6, 1944, when the world was in tremendous gloom. When Nazi Germany had completely overrun most of Europe, when there was a pact with Russia, with Stalin, when Mussolini was on the rise, when Mussolini was getting together with Hitler, when France had fallen, when a tiny outside force with Charles de Gaulle was attempting to put together some resistance in France, when England was being bombed every day, and other than for Churchill and the moral force of Churchill and the vibrant force of Churchill, times were very, very dark. And I went there and looked at that Normandy beach and the Omaha beach and wondered and imagined what it was like when the Canadian forces landed there, when the forces from the United Kingdom and the United States landed on these beaches. And just above the beach that was called Omaha, in France there was no Omaha or Utah Beach before General Eisenhower invented it. Just above that beach is something that to me was very, very touching. And it was touching only in juxtaposition to a 14-year-old who at that time was 18 years old, saying the same message. Two different worlds apart. If you go, if you have the opportunity to go there, if you're ever interested in going there, they have a memorial to all the U.S., Canadian, and UK service people who died on those beaches. And it's right above the beach is the cemetery. And you look at that cemetery and it is nothing but row after row of Christian crosses. Occasionally there's a Jewish cross. But it's row after row, and there are approximately 10,000 U.S. service people, mostly young men in 18, 19, 20, who are buried there. And as I was going through there, was thinking, and now we have Satya Sai Baba in Puda Party, India, which is, other than it's everywhere, at the time is certainly nowhere, talking about this tremendous message, the message of a return of a golden age, a message of an era in which people are going to live in harmony, in which there is going to be peace in the world. He's saying that in the early 1940s, at a time when two bombs are being dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima in Japan. And here comes his message. At a time when in Europe, between 1940 and 1945, 50 million people died. If you realize that during that period of time, 50 million people died, and then you begin to realize how long it took this world to create 50 million people, and they all died in a period of 4 to 5 years, at the same time, in this little town, comes Satya Sai Baba. I was absolutely flabbergasted by having that experience of seeing the graves, of looking at the beaches, of remembering what it was like, of going to memorial museums and having the whole history repeated. The history of the dawn of Satya Sai Baba, the early 40s. 14-year-old boy coming out with his message. What is he saying? And it's easy for us in 1992, with the world as it is today, to understand these words and to feel hopeful about these words, and in fact to feel that in fact this is going to happen. I'd like you for 1 minute to imagine that we're in the early 1940s Hitler has overrun Europe. The only people that are holding this thing together, the United Kingdom, to finally bring in the United States into the war, the period of time in which the United States was very much an isolationist country, but came into the war. The war breaks out in the Far East. There's fighting going on in Africa. And here is a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, 16-year-old in Puttaparthi, India, saying things like this. The time is approaching when all mankind, all humanity will live in harmony. Can you imagine what that kind of a message must have felt like in the early 1940s? The time is approaching when all humanity will live in harmony. Now, to us in 1992, that sounds perfectly reasonable. It sounds like a statement we can believe in. It sounds like a statement that can be affirmed. You look at the events that have happened in Eastern Europe, and it becomes even clearer that, in fact, this is what is occurring. These types of messages, however, were delivered in 1940, at a different time historically. The time is approaching when all humanity will live in harmony. That time will come sooner than one expects. Well, I suppose in 1940, that kind of message would, in fact, be somewhat incomprehensible and unbelievable, and people would wonder, what is this 14-year-old talking about? Then he says, before it arrives, be prepared for whatever is needed to reveal to every living being the true purpose of existence. And then he says, it is not what anyone alive can imagine. It is not what anyone alive can imagine, and he's talking about the true purpose of existence. Saying this historically at a time when it would be hard to find in the history of the world a time in which its people were more at a nadir point, were more at a low point than in the period of time when Satya Sai Baba says this. It is not something that one can try to aspire to. It is beyond all comprehension. I can say that its beauty is magnificent beyond all dreams. And each of you perform your silent work. And then he goes on to tell us what our mission is. He's delivering a message to the world in a tiny village at a period of time in which the entire world is enwrapped in this great war. And what in effect has occurred? And what in effect is evolving before us? Is this in fact not occurring? Does it not look clear to us in 1992 that there may come a time in our lifetime that in fact the whole world will live in harmony? That there will be universal peace? That there will be understanding amongst nations? Does it not look fairly clear to us that that can occur? That that is occurring and that will occur? And we have Satya Sai Baba with approximately 30 years left in the second part of his avatarhood. And what amazes me is when I historically look at not only the great avatars, but the great religious leaders that we've had in the world and the period of time in which they have lived. You take, for example, Jesus Christ, 33 years. Buddha, 85 years. If you want to go back 20,000 years, you can look at Rama. I forget exactly how long Sai Baba said Rama lived, but it was certainly a couple hundred years. Somebody may know that, I don't know. Thousands of years. We have 2,000 or so years ago, 5,000 years ago, we have the Krishna avatarhood. Occurred many years. And here we now find ourselves, devotees of Satya Sai Baba, with 30 years left in this avatarhood. It began in approximately 1848 with Shirdi Baba. Satya Sai Baba says in the year 2021, approximately then, he will leave his body, come back 2029, again in India, and he will be with us for perhaps 96 years, 100 years, however long, I'm not sure. We will have essentially an avatar who has come to us at this point, who will have been with us through 4 centuries. born in the 19th century, probably living through the 22nd. Coming at a time, as he repeats the famous phrases of the Bhagavad Gita, when mankind most needs him. And if you look at the 1940s, and what was occurring then, what was occurring throughout Europe, and I look at many of you who are from India, and ask you what was occurring in your own country in the 1940s through 1947, 48, 49, the tremendous struggles that were going on for independence in your country of origin. And again, I ask you, are you happy?
Yes.
Are you happy? Are you very happy?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, thank you. And if you look at that question, are you very happy, you can certainly look at all the reasons not to be happy. Those of you who are from Los Angeles, from the Los Angeles area, you don't have to look very far. You don't have to look into history. All actually you have to do is look back 1 month. And if you realize what happened in the city of Los Angeles 1 month ago, you will realize that what actually occurred was the worst urban civil disorder since the draft riots that occurred in 1863 during the Civil War. Los Angeles, the end of April and early part of May, went through the worst urban unrest in a United States city since 1863, when there were draft riots during the Civil War. And you can look at that and say, well, how can I be happy? I mean, what is there really to be happy about? One of the things that I do with the police department is I'm involved in an organization called the International Organization of Police Futurists. I've gone through a 2-year training program, actually down in Southern California, at the Kellogg West, in which there have been now about 200 of us in law enforcement and executive positions who have gone through. And what we do in a 2-year program is attempt to look at trends that are occurring in law enforcement, trends that are occurring in the state of California principally, and try to make projections and try and determine what policies, procedures should law enforcement initiate because of the trends that we see. And when I look back on the research project that I took on, I wonder, well, why should I be happy? How can I be happy? What in it was there to be happy about? What I looked at was the effect of disadvantaged youth in urban areas of California, what effect they were going to have on California law enforcement through the year 2000. And myself and others who had been in these courses had projected that before the year 1998, there would be, in California, urban unrest that would be worse than what happened in 1966. But again, we were caught short, because it occurred sooner than any of us foresaw. But it was very, very predictable, and it's very foreseeable. And what makes it so foreseeable and so predictable, and what then leads to this conclusion as to how, in this state of California, with things that I will describe that are going on, how, in fact, can we personally be happy, and what is our role and relationship to this? It is quite amazing that in the state of California, we now have 1 out of every 9 children in the United States now live in California. By the year 2000, 1 out of every 8 children in the United States will live in California. Well, that's, I suppose, something that we should take pride of. We are the largest state in the country. But on the other side, what is now becoming very apparent is that if trends continue as they now are in existence, by the year 2000, nearly 30% of those children are going to live in poverty. Approximately 1 out of every 4, 4.5, 5 right now, nearly 25% of children in the state of California are living under poverty conditions. Now, you and I don't see that very much, perhaps. However, if you were in the areas of Los Angeles where what occurred, you will know what happened and why some of the reasons for this happened. We in law enforcement are looking for reasons to be happy. But as we scan the demographics of the state, as we take a look at who is living in the state, who will be coming into the state, immigration patterns and things like that, we again feel that by the year 2000, what occurred in Los Angeles, these things are going to continue to occur unless trends change. And what is the reason to feel happy about that? It reminds me of what was going on in 1940. Reminds me of what was going on at that time, a period of gloom when we have Sai Baba. I am a captain in the San Francisco Police Department. I don't usually wear an orange robe to work. And I keep my religious beliefs and my spiritual beliefs very, very private, unless someone asks me, and if they ask me sincerely, I of course will tell them. But to me, what gives me such great hope, and what gives me such great confidence, that in fact, things that we are seeing in terms of the demographics of this state, the number of youth in the state, the number of youth living in poverty, and especially the tremendous deleterious effects that poverty has on people who live persistently in it. What gives me hope that in fact what we are predicting and what we are forecasting, although it may occur, will not occur with the same perhaps regularity or the same explosiveness than we think, is Sai Baba. And while I can't openly, in terms of what I do, talk about a spiritual revolution, it is something which I very much feel is in fact occurring and has certainly been occurring at least since 1838. And 1838 is about when we think Shirdi Baba was born. A spiritual revolution. A spiritual revolution in which each of us are now participating. One of the things that gives me tremendous hope and tremendous confidence is when I read the first speech in Satya Sai Speaks, Volume 1. Satya Sai Speaks, Volume 1, the first speech. Now this was delivered in 1953. And at the end of that speech, what does Swami tell us? Swami says at the end of that speech that we are all going to return. That some of us are going to take the fast road and others of us are going to take the slow road. So all are going to return. We are all going to make it. We're all going to eventually get back to the source of our origin. When I think about that and I reread that speech a lot, then I ask myself the same question which I, again, will ask you. Are you happy? Are you happy? Are you happy? And if the answer is yes, and I truly hope that if you are not quite answering yes now, that by the end of Monday you will be answering yes, it is because of the experience that we're having here. Swami tells us that there is a way, that there is a direction that we can choose for ourselves to be happy. And sometimes in our daily lives, for example, when I came home yesterday and found out that I had the second sheet fired in 45 days, and I again was wondering, well, what's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to the city? What's going to happen to the police department? Lots of things like that happen to you, and it sort of kicks you off kilter a little bit. And you try and get yourself back centered of are you happy and of being happy. But there's a path that's been laid out for us. There is a direction that Swami has given us. There is a route that we can take in order to make sure that we are happy. And I was extremely pleased to see that part of that route is being published and is being printed in the very brochure that you have received. In the brochure that you have received, you will have part of the path, part of the direction, part of the route to take in order to find that happiness within. Part of it. I see some of you fumbling through your pink brochures trying to figure out, what am I talking about? What is this root that has been printed? It's actually something that after the Fifth World Conference in 1990, we in the United States as an organization decided to emphasize. We decided as an organization to emphasize within the next 5 years certain things. We decided as an organization that within the next 5 years, which is 90 to 95, that there should not be a devotee of Satya Sai Baba in the United States who, when asked, what is the 9-point code of conduct, did not come up with a big question mark and a huge stare. And we decided at that conference that there should not be a devotee in 1995 who, when asked, what is the tenfold path of divinity, did not equally give you the same stare. And it is very pleasing to me to see that in your pink brochures that have been, or the orange brochures that have been passed out, that in fact that's printed there. And at the back there are sayings by Swami about being happy. About being happy. Have you ever really wondered when Swami says to whatever you have said, he says, very happy, very happy, very happy. Have you ever wondered what through his eyes that must feel like? Have you ever wondered what that must really feel like, that bliss and joy, to where he says, very happy, very happy, very happy? The last time I went to Prashanti Nilayam, which was January, February of this year, I decided that if Swami asked me what I wanted, and if I had the courage and guts to ask him, I was going to ask him if I could have a vision of what it's like when he says very happy. I was going to ask him for a slight view of what it's like to always be in Atmic bliss, so that you can say, always, that you could not be anything other than always very happy. And I worked on this for 6 months. And in my mind, I imagined and I imaged for 6 months Swami coming up and asking me, what do you want? Or I would put it in a different way, where Swami came by and looked at me long enough to where I could ask him something. To try and build up the courage to do that. The reason that I was trying to build up the courage was that I thought that if he ever gave my wish, and if he ever let me see what it is like through his eyes, to always be happy, to experience Atmic bliss, Atmic joy, that what could it be like once you come back to the reality that we're in? Would you feel very happy or pleased in that reality? I'm really not sure, but all these questions were circling through my mind. Well, the opportunity didn't present itself, and I'm not sure whether that was good fortune or bad fortune, because the more I think about it, the more I really wonder whether I could handle such an experience like that. But when he says, and he has said to me, be happy, he's told me that 4 or 5 times, be happy. And he has said, very happy, very happy, very happy. It naturally occurs to me to think, what does that mean to him, and what is he experiencing? Because I know what I'm experiencing, and I'd love just to have, without being a totally ruined human being, which I don't think would happen, that feeling, that little glimpse of what it's like through his eyes to say that. And I mention that now because part of his path to us, part of his direction to us, as to how we can be happy, is found in your orange books. And there are 2 of them in there that are my favorites. Let me pick up the book so that I can quote them accurately. This is in the 9-point code of conduct, which Swami has given to us as a means to our own internal happiness. And the ones that I always look at are numbers 7 and 8. The rest of them compared to 7 and 8 I think are a piece of cake. The rest of them compared to 7 and 8 I think you could do standing on your head. The rest of them compared to 7 and 8 I think you could do, in the parlance of my profession, handcuffed with both your head, with both hands and legs. But look at 7 and 8. And these are what Swami has given us as a direction and path towards happiness. He says number 7, speaking softly and lovingly to everyone. Speaking softly and lovingly to everyone. And that includes teenage children. They are in everyone, aren't they? It includes your spouse. It includes other Sai devotees. Speak softly and lovingly to everyone. Thank you. It does include members in the police department. As Howard Levin would say, the people in blue. And it was for that reason that I wore this blue shirt, Howard. Number 8. Number 8. Will this not make you a saint? I look at number 8 and I reflect back on the 6 days I spent in Assisi. And those were beautiful days to me because I spent most of the time thinking about what it was like in this tiny little village, which is now a huge, it's not a village anymore, but this walled city of Umbria, during the early 1200s, when St. Francis of Assisi was walking around in a, I guess you'd call it a gunny sack, burlap sack. And when the co-patron saint of Italy, St. Clare, his contemporary, was also walking around. I was thinking about number 8 then, not indulging in talking ill of others, especially in their absence. Number 8 has always amazed me that it does take near sainthood to be completely faithful to number 8, but number 7 equally puts you in that direction. I bring these up now because these are practical things that Swami has given to us. Swami has told us that these are the things that bring you the happiness and bring me the happiness that we all seek. Because I virtually would find no one in the room who, if asked, would not honestly answer that they would like in their lives, as soon as possible, joy, happiness. Would not some of you also want bliss? These are the things we want, things we find so difficult to get. I commend to you the 9-point code of conduct, and especially those who wish to rise to the experience of sainthood, a regular attempt to practice 7 and 8. And you will see the rest. For example, participating in community work, attendance at Sai functions once a month, daily meditation and prayer, they will come very regular and very easy. When you get into 7 and 8, we're in real work. This is where we are really into work. Swami also, and you have, has given us at the 60th birthday, 1985, the 10-fold path to divinity. You have that in the book, and this is something that as an organization we are stressing. Something that Swami has given us, a direction, a route, a mode, a way, to get us to the happiness that we want. So that if next year, when you are back here in Cottontail, or wherever you are next year on this Memorial holiday, and somebody asks you the question, are you happy? What I would hope that you would begin to think about is whether or not, from today onward, some of the directions that Swami has given us to help us achieve this happiness, whether or not you've been able to apply those in your life. But some of the other messages and some of the other direct indications that Swami has given us have to do with the 5 human values. And although I was away and did not hear Vice President Dan Quayle make his speech, certainly when I was through Europe and would pick up any of the newspapers in Europe, the London Herald, USA Today, the Asian Wall Street Journal, European Wall Street Journal, these kind of papers, Dan Quayle was on the front page every day. I couldn't figure out what was going on, so I actually took the time to pick one up and read it. And he was talking about things that have to do with values. And without getting into whether or not he's right or he's wrong, it nevertheless is very, very clear that for Swami, his 5 human values, those 5 human values that he has given to us and that he talks about all the time are primary importance. And when he talks about love, and when he talks about peace, and when he talks about nonviolence, and righteousness, and truth, and those 5 royal values, you might take a look at those and see if you understand the spiritual significance of those 5 values and how they apply to you, and whether or not an application for you. That question, are you happy, can get you a more affirmative answer. Now I could, but I don't want to, miss on the 9-point code of conduct number 9. Only because for me personally, number 9 is like the 2 that preceded. Very difficult. And perhaps you have heard Phyllis Crystal, to whom Swami has spoken more than to any other Westerner, the significance of the Sealing on Desires program. Perhaps you've had the opportunity to hear Phyllis Crystal talk about it. If not, you have a wonderful story ahead of you when she talks about Swami and the Sealings on Desires program. Something given to us so that when the question is asked, are you happy? The answer can readily come, yes. Because is it not true that the answer to that question lies with you and me and lies with each one of us? And is it also not true that to the extent that you can answer, I am happy or I am not happy, it is in direct relation, in direct proportion to your behavior and to my behavior and to what we do in our daily lives? Is that not true? Sealings on Desires, in which Swami is saying through Phyllis Crystal that the removal of desires, the removal of attachments, these types of renunciation is what he's all about and what he is talking about. And the objective, as Phyllis enunciates it, is to get down to one desire. To get down to a single desire. And to have that be the sole burning desire. Not a desire for a BMW or a Mercedes or Jaguar. Not a desire for the best house in the Malibu Canyon, of which I've seen many on my way in. And as Mr. Patel has informed me, they're going up daily, and they're not cheap. Not that kind of desire. One desire. Sealings on Desires, as enunciated by Phyllis Crystal, programmed not to waste time, money, food, and energy, has as its base a result. And the result is one desire left. And that desire is for God, for Swami, for liberation, for emergence with Him. So we have these paths out there. We have the 9-point code of conduct. We have the 10-fold path of divinity. We have Swami's 5 great human values. And what else do we have as a way to get us, as individuals, to when I ask the question, are you happy, that all that I would see would be a sea, S-E-A, of smiles. So that all that I would see, or anyone else who is up here, on asking that question, would see is a tremendous glow and a radiance of faces. So that that question were asked, and anyone standing up here who could look out would see something that looked like a group of people in bliss. What else do we have in order to get there? 9-point code of conduct, 10-fold path of divinity, Swami's 5 great values, Feelings on Desires program. What we really have even more immediate than all of that, which is something I again realized when I went to Assisi and went to all the places that were holy and sacred to St. Francis of Assisi, was a model, an example. And it's really truly amazing to me that for someone who died, St. Francis I'm talking about, after 44 years of life, and he died in approximately 1224, that when you go to Assisi, which is for the Franciscans still the main center, it still feels alive. That whatever this movement was that he started still feels alive, still feels as though it's active and existing. And we all feel that with Swami, that it is alive, and that you can come here to Cottontail, and you can look out the window and see something that looks like an MGM studio set up for a Ronald Reagan movie when he was an actor dealing with the Wild West. You can come here to this kind of location and sit here, and after 2 or 3 days begin to feel a living presence that was not here before we arrived, or at least not here and to the same extent and manifest in the same way as it is now. And that is that loving feeling, that loving presence of Swami. And for the Christians and for those who are followers of St. Francis, they have a model. They have someone they can look at. They have stories of his life. They have places that they can go. They have pilgrimages that they can make. And for us, we have somebody who has come in the approximately 1838, in the second part of his abbothood, 30 years left. It's a long time. That's a fairly long time. 30 years left, for which we can experience that. And why not experience it from the question, which is the theme of your conference, of be happy? Why not experience Swami from that perspective of be happy? And why not? Well, I ask the question, why should we not do that? When you go to Swami and he asks you any question and his response coming in threes is very happy, very happy, very happy. And is there not anyone in this room who has heard that, who disbelieves? And it is said in such a way that no matter what you felt like, after it was delivered to you, at least for a while, you felt very happy. I'd like to focus again on the last, at least for me, from the perspective of this talk, the last direction that we have to be able to affirmatively answer, yes, I am happy. And I'm happy because of Swami and knowing Swami and being in the presence of Swami's devotees, being with him at this time in the world. And that's his life and his message. And his life and his message, as I was thinking from the perspective of Umbria, Assisi, and St. Francis, who walked around in a burlap cloth, who begged, who taught, who preached, who worked with the lepers, who did many miracles, who cured people. I was looking at it from that perspective, of the model that we have today. Because from a historical perspective, when you look at how the people of Assisi viewed St. Francis, how many in his church viewed him, more specifically how his parents, his father viewed him, What a wonderful opportunity many people missed with him. And now we have Satya Sai Baba in the same way, except as an avatar, with all of the glory, all of the divinity. Something that has not been on earth since Krishna. Something that has not been here for the last 5,000 years. And now we have as a direct model, as a way to look at and decide to imitate someone who says, in threes, very happy, very happy, very happy. What is it about that life? What is it about that message? What is it about that way of being that each of us today could think about, each of us today could reflect upon, each of us today could inspect? So again, when you leave here Monday, the answer is you are very happy. What are some of the things? What does Swami say about giving and receiving? He says, always giving, never receiving. And he has many things that he says about service. The service that you put in 4 hours in the 3 directions that you went this morning. Swami has told us that service will never cease. To do service to your last breath. Those of you who are involved in the organization from the service aspect, who thought that there was a retirement, who thought that there was a reward, who thought that there was a time you could stop. Swami says, until your last breath. That is the direction of his life, and certainly as a model of direction for our life. What does he say about love? Does he not say, love all, serve all? Isn't it amazing that you can go to Puta Party, go around the world, depending upon what airline you take, and how many times that you're stalled because of weather or whatever, or overbookings, or stops in Hong Kong or Singapore, no matter how long it takes you to get there, when you arrive, and when you are looked at by Swami, you somehow, and I somehow, can feel from him a personal love from him to you, to me. Now, I have never, and I've traveled widely through the world, ever had that experience of going halfway around the world into a rather uncomfortable circumstance. If you've ever stayed in the shed, you know what I'm talking about. To look at a person who is more than a person, but to look at him, have him look at you, and feel this tremendous love. Be happy, of course, absolutely there. So we have his love. We have his statements of love all, serve all. A way, a model to look at Swami. It's 1992. And does not our dear Lord tell us what a great opportunity it is to first of all be born a human being? Secondly, does he not tell us what a great opportunity it is to be born during a time when he was on earth? And does he not tell us what a great opportunity it is to be born a human being, to be born at a time he is on earth, and to know of him, and to be able to experience him? When you begin to think about that, how could you but not be happy? How could there not be in each of you, somewhere inside you, a radiance of happiness? I think it's virtually impossible for that not to be there. For you not to be happy. Are you happy? Are you happy? Yes. Are you in the back, the men in the back, are you happy? Yes. And how about the ladies? Are you happy?
Yes.
Okay, you are getting happier as a group. I must say that. From this perspective, we are seeing some smiles and radiance. And especially, I always thought that the most beautiful women's clothing is a sari. And when you're up here looking at radiant faces, smiling with the beautiful colors of a sari, it is really a visual sight to see. It makes me very happy. Thank you for inviting me to experience that. We have our dear Lord, and we have Him with us, and certainly we have Him here. And He has told us that He is always happy. Matter of fact, He said He couldn't be anything other than being happy. He's also said He's God and we are God. We don't know it. To me, that means if I knew it, I'd be as happy as He was all the time. He's come at a historical period, which it would be hard to find, those of you who are history buffs, a more dismal period in human history. He's come at that period. And He came, as He said, to prevent humankind from destroying itself. And now those of us who have known Him for a while, and have been with Him for a while, and when you look back at 1940, a 14-year-old in Puttaparthi announcing that he's God, He's an avatar, and He is the reincarnation of Shirdi, Sai Baba, historically placed in the world in 1940 with the message he was delivering. And you now take yourself from 1940 to 1992 and look at the change in the world. And look at the changes that have occurred within the last 2 years. And Swami has told us that yes, indeed, this golden age will reoccur. And He has said it will come sooner than we expect. And He said it will come in ways that we cannot anticipate. And He said it will scare some of us. But it is occurring. He has also said that what's going to happen is really going to make us happy. What I've tried to point out is that happiness is part of our nature, it's part of Swami's nature. It's our own personal responsibility for our state of happiness. He has given us, through His 9-point code of conduct, His 10-fold path of divinity, His 5 glorious values, Ceilings on Desires program, and most importantly, through His own life, through His own example, the way to look at and be happy. And we have the other side of the responsibility, which is to accept it and do it. And I agree with you, those of you who you're shaking your head when you're looking at numbers 7 and 8, speaking softly and lovingly to everyone. Some of you were thinking that everyone didn't really mean everyone, that there were certain people that you could exclude. But I have always read everyone to mean exactly that. And when I was looking at you, some of you at number 8, not indulged in talking ill of others, especially in their absence, some of you were thinking that may be a little difficult. And the Ceilings on Desires program, these have been given to us as ways to affirmatively answer that question, are you happy, with a resounding yes, with no hesitation, with that glow, with that smile. What I'd like to do is conclude with a wonderful statement that last September Charles Penn gave to us, those of us who attended a retreat, a conference at La Honda. This is probably out now and people are aware of it, but if you are not aware of it, I'd like to make you aware of this in terms of just this optimism of Swami and this optimism about what's occurring in this world, and the optimism that should begin to make even those who are true doubters happy. And this came from Charles Penn, September 22nd, 1991. It was actually the first time that he had publicly delivered this. And he calls it, "From age to age I come." Charles Penn said this was delivered to him, to Swami. through him from Swami. And it begins this way. How can you take another breath and question my coming? Why do you waste one more precious moment doubting whether I am he? How much more do you have to witness before you fall at my feet and worship this ground where I stand? He goes on to say, and is this not true? All of the world is about to enjoy the hoped-for peace that has evaded man for centuries and centuries. Know that this is the time. This is the moment that lifetimes of prayers have been murmured for. The foes of peace seekers have been slain, and their voices cannot be heard again. O ye of little faith, go forth to your graves in ignorance of this truth. Or is it that you cannot know truth even when it is revealed to you because of your incarnation of skepticism? Swami goes on to say in his loving and tender and merciful way, I forgive you, and my tears will pour forth, for how sad I am that such blindness spoils this day of days for each of you. Know all ye faithful gathered at my side, for another grand gesture from God is about to be witnessed. Let me repeat that. Know all ye faithful, now all ye faithful, gather at my side, for another grand gesture from God is about to be witnessed. There will be no question of doubt, as you will see. The heavens will be in all brilliance, shower their grace upon everything, upon every living being. Rejoicing will be overwhelming. Such might may even frighten some who are unable to fathom God's greatness. Be not afraid, Swami says. Be not shaken, for my love shall rebound from now throughout eternity. Bells will peal in sweet magnificence. The blind will see, the lame will walk, the hungry will live. The alien will walk in the light. He says, there will be peace on earth and goodwill towards men. All the faiths will be as one truth now and evermore. I will give forth a light that will fill all hearts, for that is my universal revelation. Know my greatness, that my work will be fulfilled, and there will be life without end. Are you happy? No. Are the ladies in the back happy? Yes. Are the gents in the back happy? Yeah. Are the gents in the front happy? Yeah. Are the ladies in the front happy? Yeah. Then now is the time to conclude. Happiness to all of us. Be happy.
Any questions for Mike?
Richard. How do the law enforcement people and attorneys practice number 8?
The question was, how do law enforcement officials and attorneys practice number 8? Now, I don't know why you asked me about attorneys, other than you may know that I'm also an attorney, and that's why you asked that. And Swami has gone down to the darshan line and said to attorneys, liars, liars, liars. And who at lunch asked me this question of why sharks do not bite attorneys? And what was your answer? That it's a professional courtesy? Back to your question. Not number 8, not indulging in talking ill of others, especially in their absence. The question is, how do attorneys and how do law enforcement officials practice number 8? The answer has to be, for me, a very personal one. because with regard to numbers 1 through 9, I can only answer these very personal. And I have no idea what other attorneys do, although I can suspect, and what other law enforcement officers do. Not talking about others, especially in their absence. And to me, this, along with number 7, and that's why I speak about them, has been very, very difficult and is always a challenge. And the way that I do it is by consciously being aware of number 7 and 8. And always through the day thinking about number 7 and 8. The other ones are easy for me to do. 7 and 8 are very hard. And I have to continually during the day remind myself to speak softly and lovingly to everyone. That there's nothing there that says you cannot speak firmly and assertively, in addition to doing it softly and lovingly. And sometimes people who are in authority positions have to do that. Not indulging in talking ill of others, especially in their absence. Swami here is talking, of course, about idle gossip. He's talking about, as your statement says out in front, that you should talk about the virtues of others and the faults of yourself. And the way that I try and do number 8 is by constantly on a daily level being aware of number 8 and continually talking to myself about number 8 to make sure I do it. And I slip every now and then. Yes?
Yes. Were you in the police force before you died? And if so, has your people you work with noticed a change?
I joined the San Francisco Police Department in 1966. And I first heard about Swami in 1980 when I was on a honeymoon in India as a follower of Paramahansa Yogananda and doing a pilgrimage to all of the lineage of gurus of Paramahansa Yogananda. Going to Calcutta, to Puri, to Varanasi, to Ranikhet, Rishikesh, and Hardwar, and places like that. And for some reason, still don't know why, on a conscious level I ended up in Bangalore. And had not known about Swami until I got to Bangalore, and then saw Swami in 1980, and it took about a year to make the adjustment from Paramahansa Yogananda to Swami, because I did not want to, and I felt a very strong loyalty and love, and still do, for Paramahansa Yogananda, and did not want to be a guru jumper. And it took me a whole year to go through some inner turmoil, to want to be with Swami, yet not want to abandon Paramahansa Yogananda. And it was only through a dream in which Paramahansa Yogananda and Swami were both there in a garden. Paramahansa Yogananda was in a gardener's suit in the garden with a hoe, and Paramahansa Yogananda came over and got myself and sat me down next to Swami, and then he went away, and I got the message, at least it came to me, this is the way I interpreted it, that I can get rid of all this turmoil I'm undergoing, that Paramahansa Yogananda was the gardener. He was spiritually preparing me